Hey everyone, it's Phil Hall of Westfair Communications. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's video episode. Today we're going to be discussing advertising, public relations, marketing, messaging, getting the word out on your company, your activities. Joining me on today's show, next to me in this panel, is Christina Ray. She runs Buzz Creators out of White Plains or Valhalla. Where are you, Christina?
Valhalla, New York.
Excellent. Underneath me is Bill Campbell, and he runs the Campbell Lewis public relations firm out of New York City, and he's joining us from his home in Stamford. Good to see you, Bill.
Thank you. Nice talking to you again, Phil.
Underneath Bill, a little bit late to the party, but better late than never, is Michael Fox, and he runs ICR out of Norwalk. You can join us today, Mike.
Glad to be here. Sorry for being a couple minutes late.
Better late than never, no bother. And last, and certainly not least, is Christopher Salem. And he's a bit of competition with me. He's the host of Voice America's program, Sustainable Success. And he's also the author of two great books, Master Your Inner Critic and Mastering the Art of Success. And I used to run a public relations agency. I don't know if you folks knew that. And this was years ago. And around 2000, my agency, half of the clients were in the high-tech field. And if any of you are old enough to remember what happened in 2000 with the high-tech industry, that's why I don't run an agency anymore. But I'm old enough to remember that when times go sour, a lot of companies decide the first thing they can jettison is their marketing or public relations or advertising agency. And let me start with you, Christina. Why is that a major mistake for companies to decide to cut off those agencies at a time when they really may need them the most?
Well, because when times are getting bad, that's one of the most important times for companies to get their name out there. They want to make sure that everybody knows what services they offer and what products they offer. You know, for us in particular, with everything going on with COVID-19, some of our clients, we've been busier than ever before with them because many companies have had to pivot and they're offering totally new products and services than they did before. So we're helping them to get the word out on any changes that have occurred within their business.
Well, Bill Campbell, your agency is more niche focused. You're looking at the mortgage and real estate worlds and the fintech world. Is that still safe for an agency for you, even though those industries are doing well? Are you a bit afraid that some of them might decide, oh, at this uncertain time, we may need to cut off the outside agency?
You know, it's always a concern. But at the moment, you could say that about almost any industry. And in fact, the mortgage and real estate industry actually has a fair amount of, it's been kind of protected by a number of different things that are happening in the market. There's been a lot of refinance activity. In fact, some of our clients are doing better at this stage than they probably have in the last 5 or 10 years even. So, but yes, it's always a concern. You're always afraid that you're not needed anymore. The one thing that also is needed though is one of the things that an outside agency can bring, and I think this is one of the things that we do. A lot of what we do is B2B, but some of it's B2C, and what we bring to the table is an outside perspective and a little clarity. And there's a lot of issues that are concerning the consumers that the industry, because there's been so much change, is having difficulty articulating. And we've been trying to help on that. So we've been pretty busy, actually.
Well, Mike Fox, ICR has been a very interesting agency because you actually created a news microsite related to the pandemic and how it impacts businesses. For the benefit of those who've not seen it yet, can you describe what that's all about?
Sure, and maybe the genesis of it was very organic in that our clients, and we work with primarily public companies, but a number of private companies as well across all industry sectors, and we're really focused on the corporate brand and corporate reputation. But we found ourselves naturally advising clients, creating memos, emails, presentations, and so forth on how we recommend they deal with a wide array of issues that they confronted as a result of the pandemic. And we decided that these were really important and applied across all of our client base and even more broadly. And so we might as well create a public repository of all of that content, both for our own benefit to promote ourselves as a firm and our our thinking and our insights, but also to be provide a service to anyone out there who wanted access to it. We didn't restrict access to the site. I think we believe that, and I think the evidence demonstrates that companies' reputations are established in times of crisis, even more so than when things are going well. So how you act and how you behave, whether it's, if you have to lay off employees or close your business or, take difficult steps, how you do all of those things in times of crisis, people are paying close attention to you. And so we really focused in on a number of key issues that companies were dealing with and created content around those on how to handle them. And we looked at what others were doing and tried to draw best practices and so forth. So.
Chris Salem, you have the show Sustainable Success, so I'm going to ask you what might be an impossible question. Now in times of crisis, a lot of companies are not going through a successful period, in fact, quite the opposite. How can they get a message out without making it look like desperate spin that, yes, we're going through a rough time now, but we do see success around the corner?
Well, I could say, this is what I do as an executive coach besides the radio show, Phil, and with helping companies to develop a sphere of influence and an influence strategy built around core values. It's okay to be transparent. It's not there to, say, hey, we're not doing well. You're not just out there, putting out your dirty laundry, so to speak, but it's okay to be transparent. But again, really start connecting with people based on those values. It doesn't necessarily have to be about what you do, but why you do what you do. Show what's compelling to your audience in terms of where they're at this time during this pandemic. And because right now there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of industries are not sure what's going to happen or change, and we're kind of evolving with it. So it's a good time to kind of revamp that message, to start connecting with people on that level, because it's those values that people connect on that builds that trust, that when things start to get better again, then they start looking at what you do, and you're in a better position. But being transparent is a strength. It's not a weakness. So I'm highly for being transparent and connecting on those values.
You wanted to chime in on that, Christina?
I was just going to agree. Some of the webinars that I've been on lately focused on the PR and marketing field. One of my favorite things that I heard was called, it's now the compassion economy. And I think that that's very true. Businesses and people are really showing their human side these days and giving back. And, I think exactly what Michael said, companies are going to be judged on how they're handling this crisis and what they're doing. And I'm really proud of a lot of our clients that have been, giving back and doing things. And we've been trying to get some nice, promotion for that as well. One of our clients was donating 500 sandwiches a week, and we had a really cool shot of that assembly line of what they were doing, and got some really nice coverage for them on some good things that they're doing. And hopefully that inspires other people to give back and do the right thing too. So the compassion economy is something that I'm really behind.
I have to admit that sometimes I do feel bad for companies that have agencies that are not the most efficient. Today I received a pitch, would I like to interview a Ford model? Well, the 10-year-old boy in me said, yes, I want to interview a Ford model. The grown-up man said, no, I'm an editor with the Fairfield County Business Journal. This is amusing, but this has nothing to do with me. And one reason why I wanted Bill Campbell on the show is I've known Bill for many years, and Bill is one of the very few public relations professionals who actually calls. He picks up the phone and speaks to me. And Bill is a wonderful old school thing, but I've noticed that a lot of younger people in public relations and the marketing field as a whole, they're just not comfortable with the phone, and I think that's a major mistake.
Well, it's one of the tools, but it's one that we've all used for years in the past. It's also if you don't reach out and try to speak to reporters or outlets of any kind, what you're really doing is saying, I don't want to get turned down. I can send an email. I can send a text. I can put out a press release. I can put out video. I could do something that doesn't require me to put anything of myself on the line. And, part of what we do for our clients is we advocate for them. So I call.
Yeah.
And
Where-
Phil,
where-
I think
Mhm. Mhm.
Phil, I think that goes both ways, because there are a lot of reporters that give us feedback that we
Yeah.
see that don't want anything to do with the phone these days, unless it's like, already a scheduled interview or something. So, it comes down to personal preference. And I think that that's, what clients are paying a PR agency for, is for those relationships that they have with reporters. So to know that you, Phil, like to be, pitched via phone, and some others prefer email. But at the end of the day, it's all about relationship building. And that's one of the sad things to me about, events being halted, is I like being out there and, being able to build those relationships with people, and nothing beats face-to-face, certainly, whenever you can do that.
And it's a two-way street. I've worked with young reporters who can't do phone interviews. They grew up texting and AOL instant message and Facebook messaging, and you give them a phone, it's Mike, how do you train your staff in terms of building relations with the media? What advice do you give, particularly to the young people who start working with you?
Well, I think it's a great conversation that was just had there, because it's not about the phone or email. It's exactly what Christina said. It's about relationships, and you've got to understand and appreciate what's involved in building a relationship. And that can be done online. It can be done via Zoom. It can be done in person and on the phone. And I think Bill's point about being vulnerable and taking a chance and really, standing up for what you believe and making a case and advocating for that pitch for that client, is at the core of being successful. Whatever medium you use to do that is another story. Some lend themselves more easily to certain aspects of that than others. So it's about relationship building. We try to do a lot. We encourage our teams, not only encourage, but we semi-incentivize them, not in an overly formal way. And we also empower them to go out, to take time to do coffees, to do drinks, to do, lunch, where that's possible. We have teams where we say, hey, everyone needs to, meet with 2 reporters, a quarter or a month, whatever the situation might be for that team, and report back. So they know they're held accountable to actually go out and do it. If they're uncomfortable with it, we help to, try and give them the tools and so forth. But I also think that the thing that we really preach is you have to know and understand what that reporter is reporting on. You have got to follow them. You've got to, read and study their prior work, so that you're pitching in the context of how they think and operate, so that you're not pitching Ford models to Business Journal reporters and so forth. But even more so that you really understand if they're writing about software, what aspect of software are they most focused on? What types of stories resonate with them? Are they looking at it from the technology angle, or the customer angle, or the executive angle, and so forth? That's critical.
Well, Chris, with your clients, how do you encourage them to build relationships in both a B2B and, when necessary, a B2C aspect?
Well, again, I always encourage them to, reach out in where their audience is, and, again, connecting on those values. Again, you're never going to be everything for everyone, but you're going to be something for someone. So again, it's being consistent. That's what's really key here. So whatever platforms that those people identify with, whether if it's, social media, it could be, TV, it could be radio, it could be podcasts, whatever. I mean, there's so many different platforms of how people are getting information. But again, it's being consistent, and it's not necessarily what's, again, unique about you. It's what's compelling to them. And the more compelling that it can be, and that you can empower them to draw their own conclusions, they're more now going to feel like they're in the driver's seat if they align with what you do now, or why you do what you do, and what you do. They're more likely now to become more close in terms of the relationship, working with you and having a better experience. So those are things that I do on a level when I work with primarily small businesses, and then also small to mid-sized companies, and then individuals that I work with in that area.
One of the more effective vehicles for getting a message out, either B2B or B2C, have been events, trade shows, conferences, event marketing. That's been interrupted with the pandemic. Christina, how have you been able to get around the absence of that type of a forum?
So I miss events dearly. You know, West Fair obviously pulls together a number of events every year. And, you know, the Buzz Creators team goes to them, as do our clients. And, you know, it's a great way for networking, meeting people, meeting reporters. You know, reporters are busy. So when you know that it's going to be a media event that, an event that a media outlet is sponsoring, it's a great way to mingle with all the reporters that are going to be there as well. What we've seen is, you know, some clients have canceled events. I think originally back in March, people were just postponing them, hoping that they would be able to have them a little later, but they kept postponing and then postponing again. So I think now people are either switching to virtual or they're going to probably wait until, you know, either the end of this year or next year. But it's like, how many times can you keep postponing an event? Today, I took part in the American Heart Association's Go Red event. So again, that's usually a luncheon, an in-person luncheon that has a bunch of people there talking about heart health. Today, they did it online, and it was great. It was an hour long. Their format was they had red carpet entrance photos to kick it off, which was cool. They had a brave woman who shared her personal heart health story. They had doctors doing an informational panel talking about heart health. And then they, of course, had a fundraising component to it and an auction. So, you know, a lot of people are, especially nonprofit organizations that rely on these annual galas for their funds for the year, they're trying to come up with unique ways to bring it online and to still engage people and to still try to secure the funds. So I don't think they're raising as much, but then again, they're also not spending as much. You're not feeding people, you're not renting a hall, you're not doing a lot of those things.
Well, Bill, in your niche industry, events, particularly trade conferences, are a major place for companies to introduce new products and services, to connect with reporters, to connect with potential clients. How have your clients been reacting during this period when the conferences have been canceled and everything has gone virtual?
Well, I would say this is probably part of every planning call that I have with a client, at least in the last 2 months. And everybody's trying to crack the code on virtual conferences, and it's a real challenge. I mean, one of the things I think, and you've been to many of the events in the industry, in the mortgage and the fintech industry. In the fintech industry, you get events where people are actually showing things, and it's kind of cool. In the mortgage industry and some of the other real estate related industries, people really go there for the personal connections. I think we've talked about this a little bit, some of the other speakers. And so the idea of doing something virtual, which is more like a webinar or a Zoom call or something, has got mixed reactions amongst our clients, and they're still trying to figure it out. And I think one of the challenges is, and this is a question I ask all the people on the call, sometimes we as marketers or public relations people or advertising agencies come up with recommendations that we know sound good because they're the only options out there, and we make them, and sometimes we make them, but we make them putting on our marketing hats, and then we think, yes, but would we do it? Would we as an individual go? And I think that's the challenge I think a lot of people are having, is because their own reaction to the early virtual conferences has been, and now do I want to put one on? Do I want to sponsor one? Do I want to go? So it's going to be a challenge, I think, until the idea of in-person conferences is entirely off the table, probably later in this year. Anyway, it's an observation.
Well, let's get down to Mike and ask him about virtual conferences. How has your agency been approaching that subject?
Yeah, I think so. You know, for us, for ourselves, it's been less of an issue. I think we've been able to adapt, and we've operated, you know, in a highly virtual capacity heretofore, and our clients are out around the country, and we oftentimes will not. You know, we might go months without seeing them in person, but on their behalf and how they are having to adapt to, whether it's on the financial front, the lack of investor conferences and the inability to go out on the road and meet face to face with investors and raise capital, which obviously is you know an existential issue for many companies right now, to stay in business. the need to raise capital. That's, that's a process where investors, want to see you in person, want to, really, shake hands, press flesh, look you in the eye, and get some confidence in the story that you're providing them. So we've really been working with companies on how to try and, convey those same qualities and achieve those same outcomes in a virtual world. And it's not easy, but I think it's something that we really need to adjust to, because a lot of us, don't see many of those things coming back anytime soon. Many of them occur in the most concentrated population centers of New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco. They all involve travel on the part of some participants, and these are things that are just going to take a while to come back. So getting more effective at using and integrating technology, both in terms of how you present, how you involve other people, the use of video that showcases your story in a compelling way that doesn't come across as well in person, and so forth, are all things that I think companies need to figure out and get comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chris, you're hosting webinars online, and I assume that you're also watching them as well. You could actually spend your whole day or going webinar to webinar. How do you determine?
I've been doing that.
Yeah.
I've been on for the last 5 weeks. Well, I'm a speaker and corporate trainer. I speak at a lot of industry events, and I'm a corporate trainer. And we've adapted over the last 6 weeks to online, to doing virtual summits. And it's amazing what Zoom has done in a short period of time to adapt. And this is why their stock has just taken off. It's like, we're doing right now, like actual workshops that you would do in person, interactive, high touch workshops, where we're doing now 3 hours, sometimes even a full day on Zoom with the breakout, with the group rooms. And they've been effective. It can be done. You got to be creative. You got to have some breaks. Obviously, you got to keep it interactive. And I know for a lot of the industry events, like when I used to speak at industry events, a lot of them were using fireside chats now. That was kind of a theme they were going with. And you could do that stuff on Zoom and be highly effective. WebEx, it's still a little behind in that area, and GoToMeeting, but Zoom, you can do these things and make it intimate. You can make it fun. You just got to be able to adapt to it. Not everyone as speakers are not up to that speed yet, but over time they will be. You just got to be willing to learn. And I think, as Michael pointed out, it depends on the industries. Some you have to, it's going to be face-to-face, and there always will be face-to-face on many fronts. But we're going to, in this new world that we're heading into, we got to find a way to blend and do this online and in person. It's just the way it may be. And so we have to adapt.
Well, let's take a look into the near future. Let me start with Mike. What do you see as the greatest challenges impacting the marketing / advertising / public relations industry for the next 6 to 12 months?
I think everyone's in the process of getting their footing. But I think there's a real opportunity for agencies that can anticipate and infer what these recent developments, what the long-term implications are going to be. Just like the issue we were talking about in terms of physical events, there's a whole need now for a different type of training for how to present and deliver your message online. There's a role in a virtual capacity. There's an increased role for video and other digital tools to replace a lot of what's been done in person. I think as significant as this issue has been, I don't know that it's going to have long-term implications in terms of marketing messaging. Obviously, for companies that are directly impacted, they're going to need to adjust. If you're a restaurant and how you talk about you're a bar. I mean, take a former client of mine, Buffalo Wild Wings, a national chain that is all about packing people into a bar to watch sporting events. That's going to fundamentally change. Companies like that are going to have to rethink not just their business but how they market it. But I think for agencies, there are trends here that are going to last for a long time. And people are going to see how much it costs to fly out to the Consumer Electronics Show every year and buy, pay for the booth space and what they get out of that. And all of a sudden they're not spending this money, and they're going to get used to not spending that money. And they're going to look at ways to do things differently. And I think agencies have an opportunity to go in during this time, present solutions that are, more efficient, less costly, and achieve the outcome in different ways. So I think agencies that do that will come out on the other side a couple steps ahead.
What about yourself, Bill? What do you see as your greatest challenges for the next 6 to 12 months?
Again, I see a lot of as our agency. I mean, again, we have had a relatively easy transition. Again, we're small. We have only a handful of people in New York and a couple of people in California, and so working virtually wasn't really a problem. Not seeing clients face to face. Our clients are all over the country. In fact, I would say probably the majority of them are in California or Denver, out west. So none of this, from a logistics standpoint, has been a problem. And again, we are helping our clients. We're doing the same thing we always did. We're helping our clients create awareness and understanding for what they're doing. And in terms of the clients, I think someone earlier said, what's the important thing in these uncertain times? And I think it will be coming out of this as well as going into it. And I think it will be, to a certain extent, unless you're totally impacted, like an airline or the bar example, I think it will be demonstrating that you have been compassionate, that you have been there for your clients throughout a real crisis. And I think that will benefit. Those relationships will be stronger coming out of it.
And Christina, what are your big challenges going forward?
I think that the biggest challenge right now is just uncertainty. That's what I'm hearing from everybody. People are on hold with a lot of their bigger decisions right now. Even a lot of new business clients that have called us, they're just very uncertain right now about pulling the trigger on things because they want to see when everything's going to start opening up, when people are going to start feeling more comfortable being out and about. Safety concerns are going to be paramount. Everybody's going to have to showcase what they've put into place to keep both their employees safe and also, customers. So I think that those are going to be the biggest changes. This has been going on for a while now, so it's really changing human behavior. If it was a 2-week thing, I think people would have jumped back in a lot quicker. But now that it's been months, people are just used to doing things differently, even hugging and handshaking, all of that used to come so naturally for people like me. Now you're used to holding back. So I think some of those things are going to, take a while for people to feel comfortable with, even when it's deemed safe.
Well, we've come to the end of the episode, so I'm going to have to give you a virtual fist bump. And Bill as well, and Christopher and Mike, thank you so much for being on today's show. Christina Ray is with Buzz Creators. Bill Campbell is with Campbell Lewis. Michael Fox, ICR. And listen to Christopher Salem on Voice America's Sustainable Success Show. I'm Phil Hall with West Fair Communications. We'll see you again next week. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.